My name is Helena Romero at my daughter's wedding. My son-in-law called me a jealous, fat woman in front of 300 guests. Everyone laughed until his mother saw my face and whispered, "Wait, you're her." What happened next changed everything. But first, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. The envelope was pristine white, so sick I could almost feel the weight of money just holding it. My name, Helena Romero, was written in gold calligraphy, each letter perfectly formed by someone who probably charged more to write my name than I earned in a day. Camila watched me from the kitchen doorway, biting her lower lip the way she'd done since childhood when something made her nervous. "Open it, Mom." I slid my finger under the wax seal, who uses wax seals anymore, and pulled out the invitation. Parchment paper, embossed lettering. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Camila Romero and Thomas Wellington III. Thomas Wellington III. Even the name sounded like old money and mansions with east and west wings. "It's beautiful," I whispered, because it was, though every detail reminded me I didn't belong to that world. Camila moved closer and rested her head on my shoulder, like when she was 5 and afraid of the dark. "I know Thomas's family can be intense, but they love you, Mom. Well, they love me, and you're part of me." I said nothing. How could I explain that at every Wellington dinner I'd felt their eyes sliding over my body like they were taking inventory of everything wrong? The cheap dress, the worn shoes, the extra pounds I carried like war medals from 20 years of working double shifts. The first time I met Thomas was at a coffee shop near the university. He arrived in a BMW that cost more than my entire education. He smiled, shook my hand with practiced firmness, and said all the right words. But his eyes measured me and found the sum insufficient. "Mom?" Camila's voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking about what to wear." A lie? I was thinking about Margaret Wellington, Thomas's mother, and how at our last dinner she asked, with that poisonous sweetness rich women have, if I exercised or had considered options to feel better about myself. Camila laughed. Relieved. "I already thought about that. We're going shopping this weekend, my treat." "Camila, no, don't argue. It's my wedding, Mom. I want you to feel like the queen you are." Queen. The word hung in the air as Camila returned to the kitchen, humming a tune. I didn't feel like a queen. I felt like what I was, a 48-year-old woman who'd raised her daughter alone, who knew more about overdue bills than ballroom dancing, whose hands were rough from washing dishes in restaurants to pay university tuition. That night, after Camila fell asleep in her old room, she still came home when Thomas traveled for business, I pulled out my savings book. I'd been secretly saving $200 a month for the past year, not for a mother of the bride dress, but for emergencies. But this was a different kind of emergency. The next day, I walked into a Manhattan boutique I normally only looked at from outside. The saleswoman assessed me in 3 seconds, the time it took her to decide I couldn't afford anything, and turned to another customer. I pulled out my card and placed it on the counter with a sharp click. "I need a dress for my daughter's wedding, something that makes people forget to look at my body and remember to look at my face." The saleswoman blinked. Then, for the first time, she really looked at me. "I think I have exactly what you need." The dress was midnight blue, simple but elegant, and cost every penny I'd saved. When I tried it on, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Camila was right. At that wedding, I would be a queen. Only neither of us knew that kingdoms can fall in a single night. The Wellington estate rose from the Los Angeles hillside like something out of a fever dream. All white columns and manicured hedges that probably had their own staff. My Uber driver whistled low as we pulled up the circular driveway. "Some wedding," he muttered. "Some wedding indeed." Valets in actual uniforms rushed to open car doors. A string quartet played on the terrace. Ice sculptures of swans gleamed in the afternoon sun. Already beginning to weep in the California heat, I clutched my small purse, the only one I owned that didn't have a broken zipper, and stepped out. My midnight blue dress suddenly felt like a costume, like I was a child playing dress-up in her mother's closet. "Helena!" Margaret Wellington materialized from a cluster of guests. her smile sharp as cut glass. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume expensive enough to make my eyes water. "How lovely you look! Blue is so forgiving, isn't it?" Forgiving, the word landed like a slap. "Thank you." "Margaret, your home is beautiful." "One of them," she said with a practiced laugh, already scanning the crowd for someone more important to greet. "Thomas, darling, come say hello to your new mother-in-law." Thomas emerged from a group of men in tailored suits, champagne flute in hand. At 26, he had the kind of careless confidence that comes from never having to worry about money or consequences. "Helena." He kissed my cheek, and I caught the sharp tang of expensive whiskey under the champagne. "So glad you could make it," Camilla was worried you might not feel comfortable. The emphasis on that last word wasn't accidental. I wouldn't miss my daughter's wedding for anything. Of course not. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I imagine this is all quite different from what you're used to." Before I could respond, Camilla appeared in her wedding dress, a vision in ivory lace that probably cost more than my car. She looked radiant and terrified in equal measure. "Mom." She hugged me tight, and I felt her trembling. "I'm so glad you're here. I need you." "I'm here, baby, always." Thomas cleared his throat. "Darling, we should get to our seats. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. He placed a possessive hand on Camilla's lower back, steering her away before she could protest. I watched them go, something cold settling in my stomach. The ceremony was a blur of expensive flowers and pretentious readings. I sat in the second row. Thomas's mother had helpfully explained that the first row was reserved for immediate family of the groom's side, surrounded by people who smelled like money and looked at me like I smelled like something else. The woman beside me, draped in pearls that could have paid my rent for a year, leaned over during the vows. "Are you with the catering company?" I turned to look at her. Really look at her until she had the grace to blush. "I'm the bride's mother." "Oh!" She shifted uncomfortably. "How nice!" When Camilla and Thomas kissed, everyone applauded. I clapped until my hands hurt, watching my daughter smile at a man I was increasingly certain didn't deserve her. The reception was worse. I was seated at a table in the back near the kitchen doors, with distant relatives and plus ones who clearly drew the short straw. The centerpieces alone probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. I picked at my food, some kind of foam and microgreen situation that looked pretty and tasted like nothing, and watched Thomas hold court at the head table. He'd already had 3 glasses of champagne that I could count, and his laugh was getting louder, meaner. Camilla sat beside him, her smile painted on, and I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself years ago, married to her father before he decided we weren't enough and disappeared. "More wine." A server appeared at my elbow. "Please." I was going to need it because across the room, Thomas was standing up, tapping his glass with a fork, his grin wide and dangerous, and when his eyes found mine, I knew, with the same certainty you know a storm is coming, that something terrible was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I'd like to make a toast." My fingers tightened around my wine glass. The kingdom was about to fall. Thomas's fork chimed against crystal. The sound cutting through the ballroom chattered like a knife. Conversations died. Heads turned. The string quartet faded into silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he repeated, swaying slightly, his smile too wide, too sharp. "As the groom, it's my duty to thank everyone who made this day possible." Camilla's hand reached for his arm, but he brushed her off with a laugh, "Especially my new family." His eyes found me across the room and my blood went cold. "Where is she, Helena? Stand up, don't be shy." Every eye in the room turned towards me. I felt my face flush hot, my hands trembling in my lap. I didn't stand. "Come on now," Thomas called out, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Let's give her a proper introduction, ladies and gentlemen. This is Helena Romero, mother of my beautiful bride." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I managed a small nod, praying this would end. It didn't. "You know, Helena here is quite the character." Thomas's grin widened. "She's been giving me advice about everything. How to treat Camilla, how to manage money, how to live my life. So helpful, so very, very helpful." A few uncomfortable laughs scattered through the audience. Camilla had gone pale. "Thomas," she whispered, but her voice didn't carry. And she's always around, you know. Always watching, always commenting. Camila says she just cares, but between you and me, he leaned forward conspiratorially, his voice still loud enough for everyone to hear. I think she's just jealous. My heart hammered against my ribs. The room felt like it was tilting. I mean, look at us. Young, successful, in love. And there she is. Single for what, 20 years? Working multiple jobs. He laughed. And some of the guests laughed with him. But hey, we love her anyway, right? Even if she is a bit of a... He paused for effect. A jealous fat woman who can't stand seeing her daughter happy. The words hit me like physical blows. Jealous fat woman. The room erupted in laughter. Some shocked, some delighted by the cruelty. My vision blurred. My throat closed. I wanted to stand up, to scream, to run. Instead, I sat frozen, my hands gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. Camila stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. Thomas, stop! But he was on a roll now, feeding off the crowd's energy. Come on, darling. Your mom can take a joke, can't you, Helena? You're always telling me to lighten up, so here I am. Lightened up. Then came the sound that changed everything. Glass shattering. Margaret Wellington's champagne flute hit the marble floor and exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces. Her face had drained of all color. Her hand still outstretched where the glass had been. She stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. The laughter died instantly. Thomas stopped mid-sentence, confused. Mom, he said. Margaret didn't look at him. She looked only at me, her eyes wide with something between shock and horror. Wait, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're not... She took a step closer, squinting as if trying to place my face. You're Helena Romero? Yes, I managed, my voice rough. From Chicago, who worked at the Hilton and then transferred to the regional office. My pulse quickened. Yes. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. The color hadn't returned to her face. If anything, she looked even more stricken. Oh my God! She turned to the crowd, then back to me, then to Thomas. Oh my God! What? Thomas laughed nervously. What's going on? Margaret's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely more than a whisper, but in the dead silence of the ballroom, everyone heard, You just called your mother-in-law? She paused, swallowing hard. You just humiliated the new regional director of Wellington Hotel Group. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Thomas's face went from confused to pale to green in the span of 3 seconds. What? She's my new boss, Thomas, Margaret's voice cracked. She's everyone's new boss. The board just appointed her last month. I start reporting to her on Monday. I watched understanding dawn across the faces in the room. Watched the laughter die in their throats. Watched them realize that the woman they'd just mocked, the woman Thomas had publicly humiliated, held a more power than anyone in this mansion. Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't... But there was nothing to say. The kingdom hadn't just fallen, it had shattered. The silence stretched like taffy, thick and uncomfortable. I could feel 300 pairs of eyes on me, reassessing, recalculating, rewriting their entire perception of who I was. Regional director. The words hung in the air like smoke. Thomas stood frozen at the head table, his face cycling through shades of white I didn't know existed on human skin. Camila had her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face, though I couldn't tell if they were from humiliation, anger, or something else entirely. It was Margaret who broke first. I'm so sorry. She rushed toward me, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. Helena, I had no idea. I mean, I knew we were getting a new director, but I'd only seen your name on emails. I'd never seen a photo, and I never connected. It's fine, I said quietly, though it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. It's not fine. She grabbed my hands, her own trembling. What he said, what we all, God, the way we've treated you, around us. Whispers started spreading like wildfire. I caught fragments. Runs the entire Western Division. Transformed the Chicago branch. Youngest director in company history. Turned down offers from Marriott and Hyatt. A portly man in an expensive suit appeared at my elbow. I recognized him from company newsletters as Harrison Wellington. Thomas's uncle and CFO of the hotel group, Miss Romero. His voice was carefully neutral. I apologize that we're meeting under these circumstances. I've been looking forward to working with you. Your reputation precedes you. Does it? I met his eyes. Because your nephew seemed to have a different impression. Harrison's jaw tightened. He glanced at Thomas with something close to disgust. My nephew is clearly an idiot. More people approached. Board members, executives, people who'd been laughing minutes ago and now couldn't apologize fast enough. I accepted their words with quiet dignity, but inside I was screaming. This wasn't how I wanted this revealed. Not like this. Not as a defense against humiliation. I'd kept my promotion quiet deliberately. The board had announced it internally, but I'd asked them to delay the press release until after the wedding. I didn't want to overshadow Camila's day. Didn't want her marriage to start with everyone talking about her mother instead of celebrating her love. What a joke that turned out to be. How long? Camila's voice cut through the noise. She stood at the head table, still in her wedding dress, mascara running. How long have you been the director, Mom? 3 months, I admitted. The board approached me 6 months ago. I accepted 3 months ago. I didn't tell you because you didn't trust me. Her voice cracked. Or because you knew. You knew what Thomas was really like, and you didn't say anything. The accusation stung, because it held a kernel of truth. I had seen glimpses of Thomas's arrogance, his casual cruelty. But what could I say? That I thought her fiancé was unworthy of her? That would have only driven her away. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make your wedding about me, I said simply. I wanted you to have your day. Well, congratulations, she laughed bitterly. Mission accomplished. She turned and walked toward the exit, her dress trailing behind her like a wounded thing. Thomas finally unfroze and hurried after her. Camilla, wait, babe, I didn't know. She whirled on him. That's supposed to make it better. You didn't know she was powerful, so it was okay to mock her. To call her fat and jealous in front of everyone. I was joking. Do I look like I'm laughing? Her voice echoed off the high ceilings. Do any of us look like we're laughing? Thomas reached for her, but she jerked away. A muscle in his jaw twitched. I'd seen that look before, in my ex-husband, right before things got ugly. We need to talk, he said through gritted teeth, in private. I have nothing to say to you right now. She pushed past him and disappeared into the house. Thomas stood there for a moment, fists clenched, before turning back to face the crowd. His eyes found mine, and in them I saw something dangerous, wounded pride mixed with rage. This is your fault, he said quietly. But the acoustics of the ballroom carried his words. You couldn't just be a normal mother-in-law. You had to have secrets. Had to make me look like a fool. You managed that yourself, Harrison said coldly. And if I were you, I'd leave now. Thomas's face flushed red. For a moment I thought he might actually take a swing at his uncle. Instead, he grabbed a bottle of champagne from the nearest table and stormed out. The party, such as it was, died quickly after that. Guests made awkward excuses and fled. Margaret stayed close to me, apologizing every few minutes until I finally told her to stop. I start Monday? She asked quietly. You do, and you're really my boss, like my actual boss. I am, she laughed, but it sounded more like crying. Of all the people in the world, it had to be you. Margaret found me on the terrace 20 minutes later. The ice swans had melted into abstract puddles, and the string quartet had packed up and left. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt obscene given the circumstances. May I? She gestured to the chair beside me. I nodded. What else could I do? She sat, and for a long moment, we both stared at the city sprawling below us. From up here, it looked peaceful, beautiful even. You couldn't see the struggling, the fighting, the desperation from this distance. I need to tell you something, Margaret said finally, and I don't know how to say it except to just say it. I waited. I'm miserable. The words came out in a rush. I have been for years. My husband barely knows I exist except when he needs a trophy wife for events. My sons, God, Thomas isn't even the worst of them, grew up to be exactly like their father. Entitled, cruel, and I just let it happen. I was too busy playing the perfect wife to notice I was raising monsters. She twisted her wedding ring, a diamond so large it looked like it would dislocate her finger. 6 months ago, I woke up and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something for myself. Not for Richard, not for the boys, not for appearances, for me. She laughed bitterly. I'm 53 years old, and I've never had a job, never paid my own bills, never made a single decision without checking if it was appropriate. So you applied to the hotel group? I did, and they said yes, probably because of my last name. But I didn't care. I was so excited. Finally, I'd be someone other than Richard Wellington's wife or Thomas Wellington's mother. She turned to look at me, her eyes red, and then I found out my new boss was the woman my son just humiliated in front of 300 people. The universe has a sick sense of humor. It does, I agreed softly. I'll understand if you want to fire me or reassign me. I wouldn't blame you. I studied her. This woman who'd spent years looking down on me, who'd made cutting remarks about my weight and my wardrobe and my place in the world. She looked smaller now, more fragile, human. I'm not going to fire you, I said. You're good at your job. The Chicago manager said you were one of the hardest workers they'd ever seen. You checked on me. I check on all my employees, especially the ones transferring to my direct supervision. I paused. Besides, I know what it's like to start over, to try to build something of your own when the world expects you to stay small. Margaret's breath hitched. Thank you. We sat in silence again, more comfortable this time. Helena, a new voice interrupted. I turned to find a young man standing in the doorway, tall, lean, with Thomas's features but softer. Kindo, Andrew, the younger brother. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, but Camila asked me to find you. She's in the East guest room and she's asking for you. I stood immediately. Take me to her. The East guest room was absurdly large, bigger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed and windows overlooking the gardens. Camila sat on the floor in her wedding dress, mascara stained and crumpled, looking about 12 years old. Mom! She started crying the moment she saw me. I dropped to my knees and pulled her into my arms, not caring about the expensive dress or the carpet or anything except my daughter. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I should have defended you. I should have said something. I should have stopped him. Shh, baby, it's okay. It's not okay. He called you. He said those things, and I just sat there like an idiot. You were in shock. We all were. I married him, Mom. I married someone who could say those things about you. What does that make me? I pulled back to look at her. It makes you someone who wanted to believe in love. There's no shame in that. I'm an idiot. You're my daughter and you're going to be okay, she cried harder. And I held her, rocking slightly the way I had when she was small, and the world seemed too big and scary. Andrew appeared in the doorway with tissues and water. He set them down quietly and turned to leave. But Camila called out, Andrew, wait. He stopped. Thank you, she said, for being kind, for being nothing like your brother. Something passed between them, a look I couldn't quite read. Then Andrew nodded and left. Outside, night had fully fallen. Through the windows, I could see Los Angeles glittering below, all those lives being lived, all those stories unfolding. Somewhere in this massive house, Thomas was probably drinking and fuming. Margaret was likely questioning every choice she'd made. And me, I was exactly where I needed to be, on the floor with my daughter, holding her together while my own heart cracked. Monday, I would be regional director again. I would walk into board meetings and make decisions that affected thousands of people. But tonight, I was just a mother, and that was enough. 3 days after the wedding, Camila showed up at my apartment with 2 suitcases and eyes that looked like they'd cried themselves empty. I didn't ask questions, just opened the door wider and helped her carry the bags to her old room, which I'd never had the heart to convert into anything else. Thomas called 17 times that first day. I answered once, just long enough to tell him that Camila was safe and would talk to him when she was ready, then blocked his number. I can't look at him, Mom, she said that night over takeout Chinese, her favorite comfort food since she was 8. Every time I close my eyes, I see him standing there, saying those things about you and everyone laughing. He was drunk. That's not an excuse. She stabbed at her low mane. Drunk words are sober thoughts, right? That's what people say. I couldn't argue with that. He kept trying to apologize, she continued. But it wasn't even really an apology. It was more like, I'm sorry you're upset, instead of, I'm sorry I humiliated your mother at our wedding. Classic non-apology. I'd heard enough of those from her father to recognize the pattern. Over the next week, the cracks in Camilla's marriage widened into chasms. Thomas sent flowers, expensive arrangements that screamed, "I'm rich," instead of "I'm sorry." He sent jewelry. He sent handwritten notes that somehow managed to blame everyone but himself. Then came the text from Melissa, Thomas's cousin, at 2 a.m. "I need to tell you something," it read. "Can we meet for coffee?" Camilla showed me the message at breakfast. Should I go? That depends. Do you want to know what she has to say? She thought about it, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I do. They met at a Starbucks in Beverly Hills. Melissa was 24, nervous, wearing sunglasses inside despite the overcast weather. "I should have told you before the wedding," she said, according to Camilla's recounting later. "But I didn't know how, and I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe it didn't mean anything." "Melissa, what are you talking about?" "Thomas has been seeing someone. Rebecca, she's a friend of ours from college. I've seen them together 3 times in the last 2 months, and not in a casual way." The world tilted. Camilla came home that afternoon and went straight to Thomas's Instagram. Rebecca was there in photo after photo, always in the background, always just slightly too close. In some pictures, their hands almost touched. In others, they weren't even trying to hide it. How did I not see this? Camilla's voice was hollow. It's right there. It's been right there the whole time. That evening, Thomas finally showed up at my apartment. I heard him before I saw him. His voice loud in the hallway, demanding to see his wife. "Camilla, baby, please. We need to talk." I opened the door before the neighbors could complain. Thomas looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled, reeking of whiskey. "She doesn't want to see you. She's my wife." He tried to push past me, but I stood my ground. "She's my daughter, and she said no. This is your fault." His eyes were wild, bloodshot. "You did this. You and your secrets, and you've turned her against me." "I didn't have to turn her against you, Thomas. You did that yourself. Let me in now." "Or what?" I kept my voice level. "You'll call me fat again. Maybe make another joke about how pathetic I am." He flinched like I'd hit him. Behind me, I heard Camilla's door open. She emerged, still in pajamas, her face pale but determined. "Go home, Thomas." "Camilla, please. Were you sleeping with Rebecca?" The question hung in the air. Thomas's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "It's not what you think. So yes, it was only a few times. And it didn't mean anything. Get out." Her voice was eerily calm. "Get out, and don't come back. You're overreacting." I said, "Get out!" The scream echoed off the walls, raw and primal and full of rage that had been building for days. Thomas took a step back, shocked. Then his expression hardened into something ugly. "Fine, but don't come crying to me when you realize what you're giving up. The lifestyle, the money, the respect. You think anyone's going to take you seriously as a divorced woman before you're even 30. "I'd rather be divorced at 30 than miserable at 50, Camilla said. And I'd never been prouder. Thomas left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the walls. Camilla collapsed onto the couch, and I sat beside her, pulling her close. "I married him," she whispered. "I actually married him." "I know, baby. What do I do now?" "Now," I smoothed her hair back from her face. "Now we call a lawyer." The divorce lawyer's office was in downtown LA, all glass and chrome and uncomfortable modern furniture. Camilla sat rigid beside me, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Mrs. Wellington," the lawyer began. "Ms. Romero," Camilla corrected. "I'm going back to my maiden name." "Ms. Romero," he amended smoothly. "Given that the marriage lasted less than a week and there are no shared assets, this should be relatively straightforward. However, Mr. Wellington's family has significant resources, and they may try to make things difficult." He had no idea how right he was. Thomas's lawyer sent a letter 2 days later, filled with accusations and threats. Apparently, I had manipulated the situation, poisoned Camilla against her husband, and used my position to intimidate the Wellington family. They were threatening to sue for emotional distress, defamation, and 6 other things that wouldn't hold up in court, but would make our lives hell in the meantime. "Let them try," I told Camilla. "We have the truth on our side. But late at night, alone in my room, I wasn't so confident. The Wellingtons had money, connections, and nothing to lose. I had a career I'd built from nothing, a daughter I'd died to protect, and a target on my back. Then Andrew called. "Miss Romero, it's Andrew Wellington, Thomas's brother. We met briefly at the wedding." "I remember." I kept my voice neutral. "I wanted to apologize for my family, for my brother, for everything." He paused. "And I wanted you to know that not all of us agree with what's happening. The lawsuit, the threats. It's disgusting. My father's behind most of it, trying to protect Thomas because he can't accept that his golden child is actually a complete asshole. Despite everything," I almost laughed. "That's one way to put it. I'd like to help, if you'll let me. I have copies of emails and texts that might be useful. Thomas has been bragging about the affair with Rebecca for months. My father knows about it too. He told Thomas to be discreet, but never to end it. Why are you doing this?" A long pause. "Because someone should, and because Camila deserves better than what my family did to her." He sent the files that afternoon. A digital paper trail of Thomas's infidelity, his father's complicity, and their family's casual cruelty. Our lawyer practically salivated when he saw them. With this, they won't dare go to court. They'll settle quietly and count themselves lucky. He was right. Within a week, the lawsuit threats disappeared. Thomas signed the divorce papers without contest. It was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Meanwhile, work became my refuge. The hotel group's quarterly meeting was approaching, and I threw myself into preparations, reviewing budgets and performance metrics until my eyes burned. Margaret had become an unexpected ally. She worked harder than anyone in her department, never complained, and gradually we developed something like friendship. "Coffee?" she asked one afternoon, poking her head into my office. We walked to the cafe across the street, a ritual we'd fallen into without planning. "How's Camila doing?" she asked, stirring sugar into her latte. "Better, taking classes again, talking about maybe going back for her master's." "And Andrew?" I looked up sharply. "What about Andrew?" Margaret smiled. "Please, I'm his mother. I know that look. He's been different lately, lighter somehow. And he mentions Camila in conversation a suspicious amount. They're just friends. He's been helping her through the divorce." Margaret's smile widened. "My ex-husband had an affair. My eldest son is a narcissistic disaster, and my youngest is falling for his brother's ex-wife. This family could be a telenovela. You sound almost happy about it." "You know what? I kind of am." She took a sip of coffee. "For years, I played the perfect wife, the perfect mother. I pretended everything was fine when it was all rotting underneath. It's actually refreshing to have everything out in the open. No more pretending, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy. Messy means real." Back at my apartment that evening, I found Camila and Andrew on the couch, laughing at something on his phone. They sat close, but not touching. That careful distance people maintain when they're aware of each other in ways they're not ready to admit. "Mom!" Camila jumped up, guilty. "Andrew just stopped by to drop off some of my things from the house. We were just..." "Relax," I said, setting down my bag. "I'm not the relationship police. Andrew, are you staying for dinner?" He glanced at Camila, something soft in his eyes. "If that's okay." "It's okay." We ordered Thai food and ate on the floor around the coffee table because my dining table was buried under work files. Andrew told stories about growing up in the Wellington house, the loneliness of it, the pressure, the way Thomas had always been their father's favorite while Andrew was barely noticed. "Maybe that's why I turned out semi-normal," he joked. "Less attention meant less corruption." Camila laughed, and something in my chest eased. She looked lighter than she had in months, young again, but in a good way, like she'd shed a skin that never fit properly. After Andrew left, she helped me clean up, unusually quiet. "Mom," she finally said, "is it weird that I like him? I mean, he's Thomas's brother. That's weird, right? Do you like him?" "I think so." "Maybe, I don't know." She twisted the dish towel in her hands. "Is it too soon? Am I being stupid?" "You're not stupid. You're healing." I took the towel from her hands. "And there's no timeline for that. Just be careful. Make sure you're choosing him for the right reasons. Not because he's safe or because he's different from Thomas. He is different from Thomas. I know, but make sure you know it too." In your heart, not just your head. She nodded, then hugged me tight. When did you get so wise? Around the time I had to raise a daughter alone and pretend I had everything figured out. She laughed, and the sound filled the apartment with light. The final divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier in a manila envelope that felt like it weighed nothing and everything simultaneously. Camila stared at them for a full minute before signing, her hands steady despite the tears on her cheeks. That's it, she whispered. 24 weeks of marriage, and it ends with a signature. The ending was always going to be simpler than the beginning, I said softly. That's usually how it works, she signed. I witnessed. We mailed them back, and just like that, she was free. That same week, Thomas made one final play. He showed up at the hotel's corporate office, my office, demanding to see me. Security called my assistant, who called me, her voice tight with concern. He's causing a scene in the lobby, Mrs. Romero. Should I call the police? No, send him up. Are you sure? I'm sure, but have security wait outside the door. Thomas stormed into my office like a hurricane, all rage and expensive cologne. He'd lost weight, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who wasn't sleeping. This is all your fault, he spat. My marriage, my reputation, my father barely speaks to me. All because of you. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded calmly on the desk. Sit down, Thomas. I don't want to sit down. Something in my voice made him comply. He dropped into the chair across from me, leg bouncing with nervous energy. You humiliated me, he said. At my own wedding, you made me look like a fool. No, I said quietly. You made yourself look like a fool. I just happened to be the punchline you chose. I was drunk and cruel and arrogant and entirely willing to mock someone you thought was beneath you. I leaned forward. You know what the real problem is, Thomas. Not that you said those things. It's that you believed them. You genuinely thought less of me because of my size, my background, my bank account. The only thing my title changed was whether you felt safe saying it out loud. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. Your marriage ended because you're a cheater and a coward, I continued. Your father's disappointed because you got caught. Your reputation suffered because people finally saw who you really are. None of that is my fault. So what now? His voice cracked. You've won, isn't that enough? This was never about winning, Thomas. This was about my daughter deserving better than someone who would humiliate her mother for a cheap laugh. She's with Andrew now. You know, he said bitterly. My own brother. They think I don't know, but I see the way he looks at her. How long until they make it official? A month, 2. That's none of your business. She's still my wife. Ex-wife. As of this morning, I slid a copy of the signed divorce decree across the desk. It's over, Thomas. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left. He stared at the papers like they might bite him. Then, without another word, he stood and left. I watched him go, feeling nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just a profound sense of closure. That evening, Margaret invited me to dinner at her new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in Studio City, worlds away from the Wellington mansion. I signed the divorce papers too, she announced over wine and pasta. Richard is furious. He said I'm throwing away 30 years for a minimum wage job. She laughed. Your regional director makes a lot more than minimum wage, but I didn't bother correcting him. How do you feel? Terrified, excited, free? She topped off both our glasses. Mostly free. For the first time in my life, I'm making my own money, making my own choices. It's intoxicating. And the boys. Her expression darkened. Thomas won't speak to me. Says I chose you over my own son. Andrew calls every day to make sure I'm okay. She paused. He told me about Camila, that they've been spending time together. They have. And I think they're good for each other. But I also think they need time to figure out what they are, without the shadow of Thomas hanging over everything. Margaret nodded slowly. Andrew's always been the sensitive one, the one who actually listened when people talked, who noticed when someone was hurting. Richard hated that about him, thought it made him weak, she smiled. Turns out it made him the only decent man in the family. 2 weeks later, the Wellington family held their annual charity gala, a black tie affair at the Beverly Hilton that raised money for causes rich people liked to be seen supporting. As regional director, I was invited, expected. Actually, the board wanted me there, wanted me visible, wanted to send a message that the hotel group was under new, capable leadership. Margaret helped me shop for a dress, a deep emerald green that fit perfectly and cost more than my first car. "You look incredible," she said, when I emerged from the dressing room, like someone who could run the world. "I just want to survive one party." "You'll do more than survive. You'll own that room." She was right. When I walked into the ballroom, conversation stopped, heads turned. Thomas stood near the bar with his father, and I watched both their faces go pale. But I didn't walk toward them. Instead, I made my rounds, greeting board members, thanking donors, smiling for photos, professional, gracious, untouchable. And when Margaret stepped to the microphone for her speech, she'd organized the entire event. She thanked the volunteers, the donors, and then paused. "I also want to thank someone who's taught me that it's never too late to start over, that strength comes in many forms, and that true class has nothing to do with money." She looked directly at me. "Thank you, Helena, for showing me what dignity looks like." The applause was thunderous. Thomas left early. His father followed. I stayed until the end, dancing with Andrew and Camilla, laughing with Margaret, feeling, for the first time in months, like everything might actually be okay. 6 months after the wedding, the hotel group held its annual corporate summit in San Francisco. 3 days of meetings, presentations, and networking with executives from across the country. I'd been preparing for weeks. This was my first summit as regional director, my chance to prove that the board's faith in me wasn't misplaced. My presentation on restructuring operational efficiency was scheduled for the second day, and I'd rehearsed it so many times I could recite it in my sleep. What I hadn't prepared for was seeing Thomas in the audience. He sat in the back row, arms crossed, his presence radiating hostility. Apparently his father had insisted he attend. Something about maintaining family involvement in the business, despite Thomas having no actual role in the company. I didn't let it rattle me. I walked onto that stage, clicked through my slides, and delivered every word with the confidence of someone who'd earned their place. The applause when I finished was genuine, enthusiastic. Several executives approached me afterward with questions and compliments. Thomas wasn't among them. The summit gala that evening was held at the Fairmont, a stunning hotel with views of the bay that made you feel like you were floating above the city. I wore the emerald dress again, the one that had become my armor. Margaret found me by the windows, looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge lit up against the darkening sky. "Nervous?" she asked. "Should I be? They're announcing the new executive vice president tonight. Rumor is it's between you and 2 others. My stomach dropped. "What? You didn't know?" She looked surprised. "The board's been discussing it for weeks. Helena, you've transformed the Western Division. Of course they're considering you for EVP, executive vice president, 1 step below COO. It was more than I'd ever imagined, more than I'd dared to hope for." "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers. Harrison Wellington stood at the podium, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. "If I could have your attention, please." The room quieted. "As many of you know, our previous executive vice president retired last month. The board has spent considerable time discussing his replacement, and I'm pleased to announce that we found someone truly exceptional." He paused for effect. "Someone who started as a night clerk at our Chicago location 15 years ago and has risen through the ranks through sheer determination, innovation, and leadership." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Please join me in congratulating our new executive vice president, Helena Romero." The applause erupted. People turned to look at me, smiling, clapping. Margaret grabbed my hand and squeezed so hard it hurt. "Go," she whispered. "Go up there." I walked to the podium on legs that felt like water. Harrison shook my hand, and cameras flashed. I looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces, most of them smiling. Some shocked, a few skeptical, and in the back Thomas. His face had gone purple, his fists clenched at his sides. Beside him his father looked like he'd swallowed glass. I cleared my throat and leaned into the microphone. "Thank you. 15 years ago, I was a single mother working night shifts and wondering how I'd pay next month's rent. I never imagined I'd be standing here." I paused, gathering my thoughts. This company gave me a chance when others wouldn't. They saw potential in someone who didn't fit the typical executive mold, and I intend to spend every day proving that they made the right choice. More applause. Someone whistled. I also want to say something about second chances, about the courage it takes to start over, to reinvent yourself, to refuse to accept the limitations others place on you. I found Margaret in the crowd. Some of the strongest people I know are just beginning their journeys. Never let anyone tell you it's too late. The applause this time felt different, warmer, more personal. After the speeches, people surrounded me. Congratulations, handshakes, business cards pressed into my palm. I smiled until my face hurt, answered questions, posed for photos. Through it all, I felt Thomas watching. Finally, the crowd thinned. I stepped onto the terrace for air, the San Francisco wind cool against my flushed skin. Congratulations, I turned. Thomas stood a few feet away, drink in hand, his expression unreadable. Thank you. Must feel good, he said. The fat, jealous mother-in-law is now executive vice president. That's quite the revenge story. This isn't about revenge, Thomas. It never was. Isn't it? He stepped closer. You let me humiliate myself. You could have mentioned your position at any time before the wedding, but you didn't. You wanted this to happen. I kept quiet because I didn't want to overshadow Camila's day. But you're right about one thing. I did let you humiliate yourself because you needed to. You needed to show everyone who you really are when you think there are no consequences. His jaw clenched. I lost everything because of you, my wife, my reputation, my family's respect. You lost those things because of your own choices. The cruelty, the cheating, the entitlement. That's all you, Thomas, own it. And now you're fucking my brother. What? Andrew and Camilla, everyone knows. They're not exactly subtle about it. First, don't talk about your ex-wife that way. Second, what she does now is none of your business. You gave up that right when you decided Rebecca was more interesting than your marriage vows. He laughed bitterly. This whole thing is insane. My brother with my ex-wife, my mother working for the woman He stopped himself. The woman you what? Mocked, degraded, humiliated in front of 300 people. I was drunk. I made a mistake. No, you revealed who you are. The alcohol just gave you permission. I turned to go, then paused. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd been kind, if you'd treated people with respect regardless of their size or status or background, we could have been family, real family, but you couldn't see past your own arrogance. I left him there on the terrace, the fog rolling in from the bay. San Francisco glittering below like scattered diamonds. Inside, Camilla and Andrew had arrived. They'd driven up together for the evening portion of the summit. Camilla saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. Thomas, she asked quietly. He's outside. But he's leaving soon. I hugged her tight. Don't let him ruin tonight. This is a good night. The best night, she agreed. EVP Mom, Executive Vice President. Do you know how incredible that is? I did. I really did. 1 year later, I stood in my new office on the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Los Angeles, a desk large enough to land a small plane, and a title that still felt surreal when I said it out loud. Executive Vice President. The placard sat on my desk, my name engraved in brass. Some mornings I still touched it to make sure it was real. My assistant knocked gently. Miss Romero, your 2 o'clock is here. Margaret walked in, carrying 2 coffees and a smile that had become familiar over the past year. Genuine, warm, earned through shared struggle and mutual respect. I can't believe you still bring me coffee, I said. You know I could have an assistant do that. And miss our gossip sessions. Never. She sat in one of the chairs across from my desk. The power dynamic between us now so blurred it barely existed. Besides, I have news. Good news or bad news. Good. Harrison offered me director of operations. Apparently my organizational skills at that charity gala impressed him. Margaret! I jumped up and hugged her. That's incredible, you deserve it. I do, don't I? She laughed. A year ago I would have deflected. Made it about luck or timing. Now I can actually say, I deserve this, and mean it. We clinked our coffee cups together in a makeshift toast. How's Richard taking it? I asked carefully. Oh, he's furious. Called me yesterday to tell me I'm making a fool of the family name by working my way up in the company like common people. She said it with such perfect mockery of his tone that I snorted coffee. And the boys. Her expression shifted. Softer for Andrew, harder for Thomas. Andrew's thriving. He started his own consulting firm, completely independent from family money. He's actually making it work. And Thomas, still drinking, still bitter, still blaming everyone but himself. She sighed. I tried, Helena. I really did. But at some point, you have to accept that some people don't want to change. I understood that better than most. That evening, I drove to Camila's new apartment, a bright 2-bedroom in Silver Lake that she'd decorated herself, paid for with her teaching salary from the university. She'd gone back for her master's in education and discovered a passion for helping first-generation college students navigate systems designed to keep them out. My daughter had found her purpose. Andrew was already there, cooking dinner while Camila graded papers at the kitchen table. They'd been officially together for 8 months, taking it slow, building something genuine. Mom, Camila hugged me. Perfect timing. Andrew made his famous carbonara. It's really just regular carbonara, Andrew said. But he was smiling. We ate together, talking about everything and nothing. Camila's students, Andrew's newest client, Margaret's promotion, the ridiculous cost of parking in LA, normal things, family things. After dinner, Camila asked me to step onto the balcony with her. I wanted to show you something. She pulled up a photo on her phone, a save-the-date card with elegant script. Andrew and I are getting married next spring. Nothing huge, just close friends and family. My eyes filled with tears. Baby, that's wonderful. I know what you're thinking, she said quickly. That it's too soon, that I should wait, that I'm making the same mistake. I was thinking, I interrupted, that you look happier than I've ever seen you, that Andrew looks at you like you hung the moon, and that sometimes, the second time around, we get it right because we finally know what we're looking for. She hugged me, crying into my shoulder the way she had at 5, at 15, at 24, in a wedding dress that cost more than my car. I love you, Mom, and I'm sorry for how long it took me to defend you, to really see what Thomas did, what his family did. Stop. We're past that now. Are we? She pulled back, searching my face, because I need you to know that I see you now, really see you, not just as my mom, but as this incredible woman who rebuilt herself over and over, who never gave up, who showed me what real strength looks like. I couldn't speak through the tears. Behind us, through the glass door, Andrew watched with that soft smile of his, so different from his brother, so genuinely kind. 6 months later, I walked Camila down the aisle for the second time. This wedding was smaller, simpler, a garden ceremony in Santa Barbara with 50 guests, wildflowers instead of ice sculptures, and vows written by the couple themselves. Thomas wasn't invited. His father made angry calls threatening to cut Andrew off financially. But Andrew had already cut himself off. I don't want money that comes with conditions, he'd told me over coffee one morning. I'd rather build something myself. You showed me that was possible. Margaret gave a toast at the reception that had everyone in tears, talking about second chances and finding yourself and the courage it takes to choose happiness over comfort. I danced with Camila, with Andrew, with Margaret, with strangers who'd become friends, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized something. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that mansion in Los Angeles a year and a half ago. That woman had been afraid of judgment, afraid of not measuring up, afraid her daughter would be ashamed of her. This woman was an executive vice president, a friend, a mother who'd watched her daughter fall and helped her stand back up, someone who'd been mocked and humiliated and had turned that moment into fuel for something greater. Late that night, after the last guest had left and the caterers had packed up, I stood alone in the garden where Camila had said her vows. The moon was full, the air sweet with jasmine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you won, but this isn't over. Thomas still bitter, still angry, still refusing to accept reality. I deleted the message without responding. Some people spend their whole lives looking backward, nursing grievances, blaming others for their failures. I'd wasted enough time on Thomas Wellington III. I had a company to run, a daughter to celebrate, a life to live, and I intended to live it loudly, proudly, Unapologetically, the fat, jealous mother-in-law had become the executive vice president, but more importantly, she'd become herself. And that, I thought as I walked back toward the lights and laughter and love, was the real victory.